Good evening, everyone. Welcome to yet another session of our InfoX series. I would first request Mr. Rajshekharan take you through a quick overview of what we have been up to the last month since you met us. So over to Mr. Rajshekharan.
Thank you, Ram, and thank you once again to all of you for coming in such large numbers and honoring our invitation. Business Clinic is an initiative. I think most of you know about it. It's just about, we started on 15th of May and it's going on pretty well, and we're able to do a lot of consultations. I'll quickly take you through as to how we do it and what we are doing. So basically, this is idea is planning for business growth and aligning the organizations to the plan, enabling and developing employees, finding suitable solutions and challenges faced in the planning and execution. This is the overall theme under which we have, our value proposition is to offer, timely, effective and affordable solutions to a variety of problems. So how variety, I'll explain to you in a few minutes. And this is the founding team. That's me on top, and then that's Ram, who's did the initial part of introducing now. He's a certified coach, over 20 years of experience. He did his post-graduation from ISB Hyderabad. And Anush, my younger son, who also runs a restaurant. So three of us run this, I would say, a virtual organization called Business Clinic. Okay. Our offerings basically are covered on 3 P's. One is first, plan to win. We conduct business planning workshops, help companies and organizations to organize their thinking and extrude them into neat business plans, which will help them not only do the business, but also help them to review well. The second one is obviously the Persevere to Lead, which is a leadership development program. We have certified coaches in our team, like Chand is a coach, I'm a coach, Ram, Atul Joshi. So we have the ability to coach individuals, leaders, and also teams. And the third one, the third P is Prime Solutions. That's what we do is here we request clients to share their challenge with us in a simple format, and then we do a lot of clarification and ask them for a lot of information as to what the real challenge is all about. After that, we get into a 2-hour Zoom call where we try and understand it more and more, after which we are able to give them actionable points. So at the end of 2 hours, you should have a good, reasonable understanding of the problem, and we provide good solutions. So this has taken off very well. I think ever since we started in the month of May, we have done over 30 to 35 consultations, and it is moving pretty well, and people are happy with the offerings, what we are giving. Yeah. So under Prime Solutions, we have another subdivision called the Expert Insights. See, what's happening is we have over 25 expert advisors who are stalwarts in their own fields. So using their knowledge, what we do is we do this thing called the outside-in approach. We tell organizations that we will be able to, with the help of our advisors, we'll be able to provide a meaningful insights into what's happening in that field to them. So this normally a 2-hour session where 1.5 hours our advisor speaks, and after that there is a Q&A, and we also take on specific challenges, short challenges for that company. So we have done 2 or 3. One we have done in business analytics. Another one we are doing it on promotional schemes management. This is a excellent thing which is gaining a lot of interest from organizations. Some of the areas where we offer these programs are, growth strategy, R&D and innovation. Again, our advisor, Dr. Subramaniam, runs an outsourced R&D innovation outfit in Chennai, where you have a problem, you go to him, you don't have the wherewithal to get into R&D innovation. That company takes over your challenge and gets back to you with solutions. So he's there to help us. And supply chain redefined, we have Subir Mazumdar, who ex-TCS supply chain head. They're marketing the new normal. We have marketing experts like Rajesh Shivatsava. Managing money in tough times, we have Muthu Kumaran. We have several people like this. Law and taxation, Mr. Vaidiswaran is with us. Finance and fundraising, Muthu is there. Managing with lean costs. Again, here there's another interesting subject we are going to do later this month. Omya Chaudhary is going to do it. Yeah. and then discover yourself for effective leadership that me, Ram, and Chand can do. Like this, we have several areas in which we can offer the consultancy. And these are all very sharp, as I very sharply define it. We are into a short haul flight. We take only small issues which can be solved over a short period. So these are advisors. I think they are basically the mainstay of our business, and they based on need, we approach them and we get along with the client and solve their problems. Yeah. Some of the challenges we have solved, some interesting ones which we have done recently. A chemical manufacturing company had a stagnating growth. He wanted some help in expanding the business. An industrial product manufacturing company, started getting a lot of orders, but during COVID lockdown, he was facing a lot of resource crunch. And 1-year-old specialty medical clinic, they spent a lot of money in refurbishing the clinic, but the footfalls were not increasing. So we had to understand the reason, and we helped them do the right kind of references. A consumer product for the launch strategy, chemical manufacturing company, supply chain management, software development company was in a dilemma as to whether they should be in product or service, about which Sridhar is going to talk today. So there are several. I think there is not even one dull moment, and we really enjoy, doing this. So at the end of it, as me, Ram, and Anush feel, we have to give something back to our society. So what we do is on the 15th of every month, we have a webinar where we have, excellent people coming and giving advice and speeches on very interesting topical subjects. We have had Mr. Vaidishwaran, Rajesh Srivatsava, Dr. Bala Balachandran, we had T.T. Srinath, we had our own advisors doing the mentoring sessions, and then we had Mr. R. Gopalakrishnan. Today we have Mr. Sridhar Vembu, who's here. I can see him now. Yeah. Mohan. So what we do is we also do this around the 30th, 15th, we have the webinar, and on the 13th, we have a complimentary prime power mentoring session where two of our advisors sit for about 2 hours and invite a lot of challenges from people. Anybody can walk in. We divide the entire Zoom platform to 2 rooms. They sit with them and try and understand, get solutions for their problems. So this is something which we do every month. Yeah. So today, I think over to Ram to take the session on from here. Anyway, thank you very much, Sridhar, for being with us today. And we have a small thing which you have to do, which I think Ram will explain to you also. Okay, Ram.
Okay, so thank you so much, Mr. Rajshekharan, and very warm welcome to Mr. Sridhar Vembu. Thank you so much, sir, for accepting our request to address us. Mr. Sridhar Vembu is somebody who doesn't need any introduction. He perfectly fits the cliche. Everybody here is like eagerly waiting to hear him. So I'll make this really short. As all of us know, Mr. Sridhar co-founded Zoho Corporation in 1996. And he and his team have now made it the largest software company in India, while pursuing a unique set of choices. This is interesting, right? I mean, a lot of companies pursue growth, but they have been pursuing an interesting set of choices like, hiring, training, product strategy, etc. All driven by a different kind of a philosophy that puts contentment and humility as key virtues. He has been the CEO of Zoho Corporation since 2000. Is academically very, very well qualified. He has a PhD in electrical engineering from Princeton. Started his career with Qualcomm in 1994. So, and he's done a lot of interesting things, which, before, we started this call, just as we started this call, a lot of people were asking so many questions about all the interesting things he has been up to. So, I'll over to Mr. Sridhar Vembu. But before you start your address, sir, what we have been doing is we have a YouTube channel which we are launching today, where we are posting some of the sessions InfoX sessions we have had. So we would request you to kindly inaugurate the channel. If you could just declare it open, and it'll be
okay. Yeah. Happy to have it. Thank you. My best wishes.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, so kind of you. Thank you so much, sir. So we will send the link to the channel to everyone who's present on the call. So over to you now, sir, for your address.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, first of all, for that introduction, and thank you for inviting me over. Today, actually, I had, we opened a new office in a village called Thenur near Madurai. So I'm about 15 kilometers from Madurai actually right now. And the office itself is another 5-10 kilometers further out. And then it was pouring rain. I had to make a dash because this is the best place for Wi-Fi. I mean, there's a factory, a textile factory here. One of my friends brought me here. And so we thought we'll make it in time. So I'm glad I made it in time. It's like a last minute hack today I had to do because of the office opening and all of that. So the topic I actually want to, this last minute hack is a good this thing to how the product versus project mindset works. In fact, one of the things, we are one of the earliest software product companies in India, and now we are also the largest. And there's people always ask, why did India produce so many software engineers, but not software product companies? Why wasn't there a Microsoft or a Google earlier? And that goes to actually a particular mindset, okay? And this is, can you all hear me okay?
Yeah, yes, sir. We can hear you now. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, just want to make sure. Yeah, just want to make sure. Yeah, thank you. So the mindset of a product business is fundamentally different from when you do a complete project. And I'll define the two terms separately because to me, proper project management is the trains running on time analogy, right? The trains running on time. Well, think about what makes trains run on time. You got to have already tracks laid. You have to have all the infrastructure. You have to have trained staff. You have to have proper weather cooperating because if it's heavy flooding or something, trains don't run on time, as we all know. I mean, India, they do run on time these days, so I don't want to criticize this too much, but definitely that when trains have to run on time, a lot of things have to be right. But here's another analogy. What does it take to build a track through unknown terrain, through jungle and through mountain and all of that, through swamps? What does it take to build a track? That problem is much more unforecastable. Meaning you cannot have trains run on time in that kind of problem because, I mean, the project never goes as per plan. In fact, this is captured by this quote: planning is essential, but plans are useless. And that exactly captures the product mindset. Okay, the product mindset is everything becomes like a last minute rush or hack one way or another. Nothing ever seems to go according to plan. Though you roughly have some idea of a plan, but you have to make it up as you go, actually. This is true for any product. In fact, you take Apple iPhone, this is true. Okay, internally, all product organizations look kind of chaotic. In fact, if you work actually in the product, that's like working in a kitchen in a restaurant. People joke that you won't eat in a restaurant if you actually work in the kitchen because it looks so chaotic, right? Even though the food may actually taste good, but the kitchen looks chaotic, right? It's often the case. A similar thing is true in the software production product making process where things come together. Sometimes there's delays, there are setbacks, things don't work as we think they should work. So all these are fundamental issues that we face in product management, product development. And I submit that the original reason why these things never worked is that we always came in with the mindset that trains have to run on time. In other words, if we expect everything to work according to plan, well, the universe is going to spring surprise after surprise, negative surprise after negative surprise often at you. And it's too often we lose motivation. On the other hand, the product mindset. In fact, today in my actual little speech in our office opening, so in our office opening today, I mentioned this. I said, if some people asked, what is the long-term roadmap for our rural offices? I asked them, can you give me a long-term roadmap of how our product is going to evolve? People said no, because technology could change, markets could change, we have to adapt. We cannot truly know what a 10 years plan will look like. And so, which means that we definitely have to be adaptive, and we have to take it 1 month, 1 quarter, 1 year at a time. And when things change, we have to adapt quickly. And I'll give you an example. For example, in software terminology that you may be familiar, there is this whole layer of virtual reality, augmented reality that's coming up. How is that going to affect the business software we use daily? Is it going to impact? For example, is Zoom going to look different 5 years from now? We truly do not know all the answers, but we can only guess at them, and we can only adapt quickly as our guesses either go right or wrong. Then we have to adapt. So that is how the product making process always looks like. And it's fundamentally different from how projects work in IT services, because where you have to be highly predictable. In fact, the famous TCS slogan was experience certainty. And in the product business, we actually often turn it around and say, embrace uncertainty. So instead of experience certainty, we say, embrace uncertainty. That is the mindset that I inculcate in our engineers. And it often helps that this is the first job because they don't know anything else. So the uncertainty, embracing uncertainty itself becomes a culture of the company. And I often give the analogy for youngsters. Product making is very much like movie making. Sometimes you'll have one scene will take 18 takes. Sometimes the movies are always delayed and they never seem to come together. And the difference between a hit movie and a flop movie is not what is made, but uncertain conditions we cannot predict. Some widely heralded movies may flop. Some very low budget starrer could actually become a big hit. These things happen in products, where a product we didn't anticipate will become a big hit, becomes a big hit. So these kinds of things happen. So that is why it's important to cultivate the altitude, embrace uncertainty. And that mindset is what keeps the product industry both interesting and there is a risk involved, obviously. It's like movie making, there are risks involved. And in fact, that risk itself means that the distribution of rewards is very bimodal, as they call it. Bimodal means most of the efforts fail or fail to produce a return. And while some of the things become big hits. So your returns actually come from very few of your initiatives. And this is actually the product mindset, really. That I already see chats coming up, so I will try to respond to them after I finish this little thing. So this mindset of embracing uncertainty, taking the risk, be prepared to fail, is essential to succeed in products. And we now have over 100 products in different markets. So we kind of have a very good idea of how these things work. And it also has, team structures, inter-team dynamics. I'll give you an example. There may be a product that's actually successful in the market. There may be another product that's not successful, and these two teams have to work together. There's often subtle dynamics that arise where the successful team guys remind the other guys, hey, often they will say literally something like, hey, we are the ones putting food on the table. Keep that in mind, or something. And which sounds insulting to the other guys. Obviously, it will sound insulting to anybody. So I have to intervene and say, guys, you didn't actually, don't be so arrogant, because next time it could be your product in that shape. And we cannot actually predict this. Nobody can predict this. So these kinds of dynamics, all these factors arise. So that's what makes the product mindset different. And actually, one of the questions that has come up, I think it's useful to address at this point. How do you operationalize embrace the uncertainty mindset in the team? First, from the beginning, we actually, in our very introduction sessions, we actually talk about this issue. That nothing, in fact, I often tell people, if you have gone through your life with predictable, like every year I advance 1 year in school, and then I go through college, I got all my grades in right, I'm a very good student, I will tell them, I hate to break it to you, you are the exact student who is going to have trouble here. The reason you're going to have trouble is nothing seems to go according to any plan. On the other hand, The employees who come with some, let's say, spotty academic career, they got a couple of arrears, they got dinged here and there. Those guys actually are able to embrace uncertainty better. This is an experimental observation. In fact, one of the reasons for Zoho University program is we want people who actually have experienced uncertainty in life before. People who have gone through very smooth sailing often have trouble in these product teams because they expect smooth sailing. And when it's not delivered, they think something is wrong with them or something is wrong with the universe for delivering that uncertainty. They don't seem to get it that it's an intrinsic nature of the business. And the way we give analogies is, look, when you want certainty, I ask people, can you be 100% certain when you cross the road in Chennai you're going to be alive? I gave analogies like that. And unfortunately, all too real, these things have happened to our own employees because the traffic is so bad and our numbers are huge enough. Every year we lose 1 or 2 people to road accidents, sadly. So I tell, when life itself is so uncertain, and can anybody be guaranteed that when they marry, they'll be absolutely happy in a marriage at all times? Can anybody guarantee that their kids will be always do great and awesome and everything? Can anybody guarantee all those things? Nobody can. Then why do you expect that somehow a product will go very smoothly as per plan? If you accept the intrinsic uncertainty in life, then you will extend it to accepting it in products. So this is the mindset that we cultivate across the board in our teams. And it turns out to be very valuable in product management. I mean, this is probably the most critical is not your technical capability itself. That is important. But even before the technical capability question arises, the mindset is needed. And in fact, one of the questions that came up during the discussions before this, before my presentation started, was how far is Zoom scalable, right? In fact, we actually now have in our labs technology now that can scale this to thousands of participants. In fact, we can even stream it to tens of thousands of participants. We are actually testing this. In fact, last week we were testing this across the company. And so we are on this market. We are actually working hard. As of March, when all this pandemic hit and all of that, we were not even able to scale to about 20, 30 participants. Today, we can actually scale to thousands. But yet, we could not have predicted at that time how long it would have taken to do that scaling. It took us in the event, it took us about 7 or 8 months. But I could not have predicted it. So I did not even attempt to predict it. I said, we are going to go back to the labs, drawing board, figure out how to scale all these technologies. Our teams rose to the challenge. Now we have really super massively scalable technology for meetings with a lot of nice features, a lot of that has come up. So by next year, we will actually be a very strong contender in this market. So there'll be an Indian-made software, there'll be globally highly competitive in this meeting software, and a lot more goodies we are working on. And for example, our chat is way superior to Zoom because we are in the chat market. We have a product called Zoho Click that's competing directly against Slack. So we'd be the only company that will have both put together very well, extremely well. Microsoft is trying, and so we are doing that. So this is how we operate, the product mindset where we embrace uncertainty. We roll up our sleeves, get to work. And one way I inculcated is I myself work on products directly. In fact, there's one product that's under my direct supervision, partly because it was my own idea. Partly also
sorry, sir, go ahead. I just muted the person.
Yeah. So I keep one product with myself for both learning from the experience, on the ground experience. Second, also humility, because people can see my own product has go through the same problems as others. I often joke that, for example, my product, we slipped our announced milestones about 6 months or 1 year. And I joke across the company that that's what happens even when I do it. That even when I do it, things slip, things go out of track because difficult problems we are solving. So that allows me to stay grounded, connected to our teams, and provide guidance that is more appropriate to their problems, rather than some sermon on the mount where I give a sermon and go, where people don't actually believe it because I don't have the concrete experience. So that is how we do it. Now let me come to the question chat. Are we developing picking people criteria, linear life path versus non-linear disrupted? Yeah, that is actually an important one for product management. The next question in chat, Chandas, are products developed to address pain points of customers or independent of customer needs? And it's actually a bit of both. You obviously have to have some customer need in mind, but you also have to go beyond that. I mean, I'll give you an example. Nobody wanted a phone without a keyboard. So Steve Jobs went beyond the stated customer need with keyboards and produced a phone without a keyboard. And now all phones don't have keyboards. So you have to have something that predicts customer demand ahead of time and some things that addresses existing customer demand. So it's a both issue. Both approaches are valid. So people usually relate to solving a specific customer problem, but they seldom relate in the product and look at how it should be handled in the product. As against finding a fix for the customer is a difficult trait. So how do you make everyone think product? Yeah, this is actually an important one when everybody carries a project experience. We have to do this at the hiring level itself and make sure that people understand they are signing up for something very different. And your past experience, in fact, recently it happened to me where I was hiring an experienced candidate from a services background. I told him, you are very qualified, you have technology background, but you have to understand, you have to make a mindset shift. You almost have to go through a brain surgery to accept that a lot of things will be very different. I asked him, are you prepared for it? Because you have a good job already. Do you want to switch to a different mindset and perform brain surgery? I asked him, think through this because don't do this lightly. This is a warning I told him because it's not about him being qualified for the job. It is about, is he able to shift the mindset? So, next question, why are there not many product companies coming out of India? How can we improve on the success rate? That's a good one. First, a lot of our industry has been in this, what I'm going to call trader mindset. What's a trader mindset? You buy something and you sell them something quick. And then you recoup your money, investment quickly. Well, in the product business, you cannot recoup your investment quickly. In fact, take our audio video software. We started working on audio video 6-7 years ago. Only now we have actually a truly competitive product in our labs and that's coming out soon. So all these years we have had to invest in this technology without a return. This is something important to understand about products that you often have to have long gestation periods. So understanding that going in is important. And the second is, I may of course mention the embracing the uncertainty mindset in the workforce. The third is a fluid, flexible mindset, and that life experiences that are people have gone through adversity often develop that. We'll face it as it comes mindset. That's not necessary. We'll face it as it comes. So this is one of the interesting comments. Westerners mock India about India being a chaotic environment. Zoho is a good example of framing chaos as a value and leveraging this towards success. Absolutely. In fact, you always have controlled chaos in product development. In fact, that's why even my job is in a way easier because I never expect that everything is very smooth according to plan, all that. I expect that things will go wrong, we'll go back to the drawing board, we'll have all this. So that's why it's easier to manage with that mindset. How do you hire people? What do you look into? Actually, one thing we don't look into is very fancy credentials. We don't look into how good are the grades, how great is the college. Those are the things we don't look for. What we instead look for are a certain attitude, maybe life experiences that are varied, and maybe the ability to roll up the sleeves and get it done. And often those are not discoverable in an interview. You have to conduct some kind of a incubation. So we ask people who are often who don't have a job to come in for a month or two, we'll pay them, but you have to prove yourself. You have to demonstrate that you have the capability. That actually has a very good success rate for us, that kind of hiring. So there's a question, work toward a product goal versus work on just developments very narrowly addressed to customer requirements. How do you bring this shift in thinking? Again, this is the shift that has to happen by, for example, let's say it's another challenge. We are producing a spreadsheet, online spreadsheet that is to beat Microsoft Excel. And we have been working on this technology for 12 years now. I mean, Excel is a very hard problem to crack. We have a very good solution now, but we are still scaling it up. A lot of things are happening there. And so the team is hyper focused on this problem. And that hyper focus, we have to beat Excel. We have to be a better spreadsheet. That's important in the product business. Yeah, if a service company evaluating client project, executing client projects wants to spin off products, how challenging is it for them? What would you take care of? Yeah, I said the mindset shift is the most important. They may have the technical capability, but they may not have the mindset to do the product, so they have to shift that mindset. And you have to take that into account when you plan for this product shift. The products necessarily need to be cheaper, better, faster than existing competitors. So there are varying approaches to success in the market. You may have better marketing, superior marketing. You may have superior distribution. You may have superior branding. And you may create a wow effect among customers. In those cases, your product may get away with being costlier than competition. So it's all about your differentiation, your perception, a lot of those. Though it helps to be generally cheaper, better, faster, but I don't know that that's a universal requirement. Why are Indians expecting product as free? Well, yeah, I'll put it this way. US has $50,000 GDP per capita. India has about $2,000 GDP. That's a 25-fold difference. Software products don't come 25-fold cheaper, right, in India. They may be half the price or something, but still they're not that cheap. So the ability to pay for is a lot lower. And that is often the reason. As our GDP goes up, in fact, software products are one of the fastest growing segment in India right now. So if success of product is uncertain and returns unpredictable, one needs large pool of capital to get into product companies. Where does VC funding come from? Or only the big will keep getting bigger? Definitely the big keep getting better. It has been through Microsoft, look at Microsoft or Google. But it's not all pessimistic. You can actually build a niche product and get into a market and then use the profits to fund further development. That's exactly what we did. So we didn't get into a Microsoft Excel problem or a Zoom problem in the beginning. We solved some small local problems that are easier to solve, and there is a market, not a huge market, not a hugely profitable market, but at least kept us alive. From there, we went on to it. So we have developed a HRMS from entry to exit, completely integrated, done piloting with 3 different types of companies and successful. Any advice to us to focus on while going to market? Yeah, again, this the advice I would give is find your differentiation. What's different about your product? Why would the customer choose you versus some other company? And it could be any dimension. It could be your product, it could be your user experience, it could be your price, it could be your channel, marketing, brand image, support, service, all of any of these. It could be a differentiation. So find the differentiating element. That's the first key element. How do you manage the investors? Actually, fortunately, I don't have that problem. Therefore, I don't have that experience. So my attitude to managing investors, which is my own family and close friend, Tony, is that we pay no dividends. There's no exit. You are locked in. Good luck. That is my attitude to managing investors. Obviously, it's not going to work with public investors. So I'm very grateful I don't have public investors or other investors. How do you harness customer insights? Are there people out in the market looking at customers and competitors? Yeah, all our teams are constantly looking at the market and the audience. So it's not actually, let me actually turn off the AC here. It's getting too cold. So, sorry. Somebody turned on the AC here. How to get internship at Zoho? That's a good one. The best way to get internship is to reach through some existing employee so that they recommend, because if you come in cold, there's thousands of people who are applying and it's difficult to, and we also don't rely on credentials alone or testing alone. So we'd like to talk to a person, and it might be useful to just know somebody and then try it.
Sir, I can actually read out the questions for you in case it's easier for you. Yeah, I think it'll be easier for you that way.
Yeah.
So, so they're asking, how do we brand Indian product companies? We would like Zoho to be known as much as a Google or Apple internationally. So how do we work on branding Indian product companies?
Well, branding is not separate from your product and your success. As Zoho, actually, as of this year, Zoho's popularity has skyrocketed even in US, India, everywhere now. For example, if you look at our Alexa rank, we are now in the top 160, 170 companies in the world now in terms of web traffic, which if you look at it 1 year ago, we were like top 300, 350 or something. So we have rapidly shot up this year. And within another 2-3 years, we'll be in the top 100. Maybe eventually, hopefully in the top 10 or top 20 traffic companies. So the brand is something you build over time. I don't know that there's an overnight recipe there. You want to have a successful product, at least a product that is appealing to a large enough base to have a brand. That is how I put it.
Then there's a related question on the product. So how do you evaluate value of a product? What points should we consider when we evaluate a product for its value?
Yeah, it's evaluate for building it, evaluate for buying it. There's a difference, right? I'll give you the building perspective because that's the one. I'm not buying products as much as building it. To build it, we look at, for example, what is the competitive landscape? And if there's no competition, there must be alternatives or substitutes or something. What does that landscape look like? And if there are competition, what do they do? What is their strategy to succeed? How do we break through into the market? And what is the minimal product that is needed in order to appear in the market, for example? So all these questions arise, for example, like in Zoom right now, right? We are actually aggressively entering this market now. So we evaluate what is their strengths, what is their weakness, how do we address their strengths, how do we exploit the weakness, all of those. That's how we think.
So I've attended your talks before also, and there is a diverse range, right? Like, for example, you said you're also, in one of the talks you said that you're also evaluating gotten into semiconductors, and you were told in the talk that you're also, evaluating what can be done there, because you were talking about ownership of information, how so much of information is residing outside the country, etc. So there's also a related question around, when you evaluate products, then what all factors do you consider? Which all area do you invest in, etc.? That was another question that came up, so I thought I'll just start.
Yeah, our diverse range is not because I work on it. I don't. Our semiconductor initiative is headed by a CEO that runs this, and we actually have similarly a medical equipment initiative that also has strong leadership. I provide primarily in these cases motivation of, we need to crack this problem. India does not have very good chip companies. India does not have very good medical equipment companies. Let's address these challenges. Let's invest in the R&D. Let's learn by struggling through it. That's what I supply. The actual day-to-day execution is taken care of by the respective teams. That's how we do it.
Sridhar, one question. I think everybody is very, very keen to hear your story, your successful story. So maybe you could, people want to know, you've been so good, so successful, very, briefly, or however you would like to share it with us.
Well, it's not, I generally to talk about myself too much, but the reality is there was nothing very special when we got started, okay? If you had visited us in 1996, 1998, we were about as average like any company, really. In fact, there was nothing special going on. And our first goal we set was, let's put food on the table. Let's try to bring enough money to feed ourselves and stay in business, right? And then we gradually developed our muscles, more and more how to compete. And so we are a company very much that's bootstrapped, and we took the slow road. It's 25 years now, 25th year now almost. So, and that mindset is like, patience was the key virtue. And being patient in business. And I don't know that sells well to somebody, necessarily a new entrepreneur, that be patient. Might not be a, selling pitch, but luckily I'm blessed with co-founders, all of us who are patient and no real rush to the exit, don't have to succeed instantly, all of that. We enjoy being in business, I'll put it that way. If you enjoy being in business, then you don't crave big success. You just want to be there every day. And then maybe success will come to you. Success didn't come to us, big success didn't come to us in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, but it started coming in a later stage. So I don't want to make a big deal of it because, I mean, even 10 years ago, when we were not well known at all, we still had, we are a happy company inside. And so we are still a happy company. I hope it will remain that way. The success, I hope, doesn't make us unhappy.
There are a lot of questions, Mr. Sridhar, around your experiments and many successful things that using a bunch of tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 cities, etc., and doing experiments with that. A lot of people want to hear about that and your advice for them as to how they should go about it if they want to do something like that.
And shifting his head office to that's what everybody wants to know.
I think basically people want to find out how do they move back to their villages and places of origin and start working from there.
Yeah. So the key, see, these initiatives started more than 10 years ago. Our Tenkasi office is now about almost 10 years. And that was a key, the motivation for that, we explain why that came. We actually had, we were hiring in Chennai, but I noticed that 80% of the people come from other districts, mostly rural, right? And I used to think, why are we bringing people here? Why don't we go there instead, right? And that was the motivation. And we wanted to start one rural center and make it successful. And that was our Tenkasi operation. And it started with 6 people in a small office, very close to the Tenkasi, the Kasi Vishwanath temple in Tenkasi. And that operation was successful. In the beginning, it was fledgling. Actually, I remember my first visit to Tenkasi to visit this team, and the team was saying, it's very lonely out here. We are the only software engineers nearby and we feel lonely. What do we do? I said, stay the course, it will improve. Stay the course, I told them. Be patient. And 10 years in, now there are 500 people in Tenkasi. And we ship a world-class product called Zoho Desk, and that has become actually successful. Against our next nearest competition is actually Zendesk, which is based in San Francisco. So we compete with a San Francisco-based company from Tenkasi. And we are able to do it. We are able to win customers like, for example, Daimler-Benz is a customer in Germany for this product. And they evaluated Zendesk. So they picked us. So that's an example where we are able to hold our own in fairly difficult competition from Tenkasi. That is the key. That experience taught me that we can do a lot more. So about a year and a half ago, I decided to move to a village myself. That's pre-pandemic. Actually, I was doing it pre-pandemic. And then the pandemic struck and our rural plans accelerated. In fact, today's office is maybe the 14th rural office now. We are filling the southern India map with the dots all over the place. All obscure places that are not even in the Google Maps often. We are setting up offices there now. So by the end of the year, we think we'll have about 20 or 25 offices, rural offices. So that's how it's spreading.
The chat is buzzing with questions, and so I'll try my best to group it together so there are a lot of questions around product design and stuff like that. But one question from Mr. Chandas, do you run Zoho accelerators to take a look at tech startups whom you later acquire? Like the US companies do a lot of this. Does Zoho follow a similar approach? Is one of the questions.
We actually don't have an accelerator program yet. Not because we don't believe in it, actually. Just nobody has built the cat, and it's been, among all the initiatives, that's one thing we have not done.
Okay. I'll move to the bunch of questions around products. So, question from Hiran Vedam. She's asking, while basically developing the product, at what point do you decide that the product is not going anywhere? How do you decide between abandoning, pivoting, or combining it with other products?
Yeah, these are some of the toughest questions actually you face. Can you really know for sure? There are products that seemingly don't go well and then turn around. And sometimes they don't turn around. How do you know whether it will turn around or not? So these are difficult questions, and it's a judgment call. This comes down to, like, do you really believe in this will go? Do you believe a market will come to exist? Or it's not that hopeful? And it's easy to, play a hindsight blame game where, we always knew or wish, we try not to find any blame. We try to find, okay, it doesn't work, maybe we'll move on. Or we believe in it, we'll try again. So those are the choices I get to make often.
Sure. There's a question.
And I don't always get it right. I don't always get it right. I would be honest here. So
there's a question from Mr. Chandrasekharan Vaidyanathan about your thoughts on the importance of user experience design in developing products.
yeah. Actually, you asked me 10, 12 years ago, we were not also good in user experience, and it was, tough challenge. Increasingly, it has gotten better. Now we actually have a really world-class user experience team. So we grew that capability, and that's very vital now. The reason it's very vital is software has become a hyper-competitive field, and these are like basic necessities. If we don't have a good user experience, customers won't come. So it's vital to get that right.
Being a largely product-centric company, Mr. Chandra asks, what are the factors you consider for being up there on customer satisfaction and customer-centric satisfaction?
Yeah. So it starts with the product, quality of the product first. If we ship a poor product, it's buggy. No amount of customer support is going to solve the problem. So the quality of the product, quality of the design, the user experience, all that matter for customer satisfaction. On top of that, excellent support is essential. And what we do, we actually try to max out on the support investment. We don't outsource support, that's the first thing. It's all in-house. The second thing that we do is we treat support as a good career path and not some kind of a call center shift. So there are people who have been there 10 years, 12 years in support. And because of that, the quality of the support they offer is extremely good to the customer. So we invest in support, we take care of our support people, we treat that as a good career path, then we take care of the customers. And we also make sure that nobody is overloaded. We don't have like so many calls a day, quota, no more than 5 minutes per call, all of that. Take the time to solve the problem. That is the approach.
In fact, that answers Mr. Chandrasekhar Rao's question. His question was exactly that, around having third-party intervention to help implement your products and support your customers. So I think you have handled that.
Support we do. Third party, we actually have partners that implement often, because those are consulting jobs where you need to know the customer requirements. And that is an area where you require a lot of people, and we don't have that many people. I mean, we only have about 9,000 people, 8,500 people actually. So, and we carry a lot of products. So we cannot do all the services ourselves. So we have partners to do it. In fact, vast majority, 99% of services we don't do. We may occasionally do it in case some risky thing is involved, where some new technology is involved, then we take the risk. So that's what we do.
So there are a bunch of questions around this focusing in a narrow area versus going wide. For example, there's a question from Siddharth Chandrasekhar, like going after one big problem in a narrow segment or working on multiple small problems across segments. Which would you believe is the way forward? And does it differ between different stages in a company's trajectory?
It absolutely varies according to different stages of the company. When you are very small, it might be worth solving a smaller problem. Because, I mean, unless you have $500 million in venture capital, you may not have the time and the resources to tackle a very big problem. So take on a small problem. And then as you succeed, go to increasingly larger problems. That is how I'll say. So it actually depends on the stages of the company.
There is a question on Zoho University. So is Zoho University a completely captive facility or a social initiative? Can other product companies hire from Zoho University? So could you talk a bit about Zoho University and address this?
Yeah, Zoho University is a program where we take high school or polytechnic students, 10+2 or 10+3, and put them through our own program. And now it has become an institution within Zoho. And as of now, it is primarily intended for Zoho because we ourselves have huge demand. Zoho University only meets part of our own demand. In fact, this year we may hire more than 1,000 people. Zoho University may contribute about 200. So we are not even meeting about 20% is the maximum we meet today in terms of our hiring needs. We'd like to meet more, but there's all these bottlenecks in faculty, recruiting students, all of those. So that is the reason why it is a kind of internal program right now. Second, the lot of what is taught is also contextual. I believe education should be contextual. The reason for that is, I mean, we all have experience with college where we took a class that was even interesting, maybe we did well. Take the best case. The class was interesting, the professor was good, we did well. Yet, we don't use it. 5 years later, we would have forgotten it. Okay? It's true in most subjects. That is talking about the best case. The subject was interesting to us, professor was good, we did well. All three conditions. And all those classes we forget, even. So unless it is contextual and you are in it, the knowledge doesn't stick to you, and particularly advanced knowledge. So it is important actually to contextualize the education and make it experiential, learn by doing, and then make it relevant to the job. So in that sense, every company should be running their own version of Zoho University. And it's not that expensive. It is not that expensive. Most companies can afford it.
There is a question from Mr. Raghu, and there is a related set of bunch of questions around COVID and how you have dealt with the impact of COVID at Zoho. So he specifically asks, has COVID made you rethink the product strategy and business models at Zoho?
Product strategy, especially the remote tools, are getting much better now. So there's a lot more remote work tools coming. So they'll hit the market in the next few months, we'll see. And in terms of business model, nothing much has changed. In fact, we have accelerated our rural expansion. That is one change. But we were always planning rural expansion. So it's not new per se, but we have accelerated. We didn't anticipate opening like 25 rural centers this year. So, so that's why I actually want to, in fact, Zoho University questions are best responded by. I have a Zoho University faculty, Ms. Akshaya Sivaraman is there in this meeting. She also happens to be providing research assistance. In fact, this meeting preparation, actually she had helped me out. So maybe she can come online and she can respond to some questions here. Akshaya, take it over.
Akshaya, go ahead.
Yes, hi sir. Yeah, so we had specifically asked about whether other product companies can recruit Zoho schools students. Like Sridhar just mentioned, this is contextual. We specifically are training students to work at Zoho. The very idea of the Zoho University being inside the company is because we just don't want to instill knowledge. They want them to understand our culture, know our employees, be part of it from day one. And students after becoming employees do leave us, but it is very rare. That's for different reasons. Probably they would want to move to some other place or something like that. And they do get hired outside, but this training is not for companies outside. It is specifically for Zoho. That is the understanding also. So.
Thank you, Akshaya.
Yeah.
There is so related to the earlier questions, sir, around the pandemic. So there's a question from Nitin. He says that generally it's been seen that companies which were working conservatively have survived this pandemic. So in this scenario, then should a startup product company work aggressively or conservatively?
Yeah. So, how much money you have. Aggressively means that nowadays that means you spend a lot of money. Conservatively means that you don't spend a lot of money. So to some extent, it's driven by how big is your VC wallet, right? How big is the VC willing to fund you?
Yeah.
In general, I come from, because we are bootstrapped and we are generally conservative about how we spend money. But we have lots of VC money, you might want to go for it, right? It's like Flipkart. So they lost $1 billion, but still made a lot of billions in exit, right? So for some people, the model works out.
Yeah. There are a bunch of questions, sir, around the work from home. So, some people are asking. So, question was around. One is, how is Zoho's experience? Second is there a need for a hybrid model rather than just a work from home? How do you see the deliverables? I mean, employees working far away from each other. How do you see the deliverables still being delivered within deadlines, etc.? So, bunch of questions around the whole work from home model and your experience, and how do you think it will look going forward?
Yeah. So the work from home, I actually believe that work from home will be augmented with work from the smaller offices. Because, see, particularly in India, but definitely even for many people, I actually believe maybe 20% of the people really, truly, long-term can work from home. They want the social experience of office. They want to meet other people. They want to make friends. They want, work is not just work. Office is not just work. You have other things going on, subtle things that are important to people, the social experience, all that. So you have to combine, in other words, work from home is one extreme, work from a very large facility is another extreme. There is the concept of this satellite or small office in the middle. I come down the middle. So I'm like a middle path person, the Buddhist middle path, where they're extreme, not work from home, not large offices. That's the strategy we are pursuing. A lot of smaller offices around the landscape. So we want to have within the Tamil Nadu context, for example, of Southern India, about a maximum 10 to 20 kilometer commute. And within that, you have to have an office. That's the hope. So at least 2 or 3 days a week, you can work from an office. That's the idea.
So there's a bunch of questions around marketing for product development. One of them is from Mr. Oman Abraham, who says that many entrepreneurs in India are very passionate about product development, but by the time they develop the product, they may not have enough resources to market it or may not have the wherewithal. What would be your advice for people, product developers, on how to market products? How do they go about it?
Yeah. In fact, marketing is one of the toughest challenges today in SaaS. The primary reason being you have massively overcrowded markets, right? You have a lot of areas where there's overcrowding in SaaS, too much money chasing, companies, all of that. Too few customers, really. The number of customers is small compared to the amount of money chasing those customers. So it is important to, for new product companies, to take the marketing approach from the beginning. How are we going to reach the customer? If you think, oh, we'll advertise on Google, well, your click maybe cost per click maybe $30, $50, $60. And then you have to invest a lot of money to find one customer. So those problems are important to solve from the get-go. So I would say your product problem is almost a marketing problem, not just a product problem. So that is the mindset I inculcate. That don't think of, I built the product, how do I market it? Think of holistically the product and the marketing together from the beginning.
There's a question from Mr. Chandas. Does the 80-20 rule apply at Zoho? Like, does 80% of revenue come from 20% of your products?
Could be. Actually, we have a little broader distribution than that. But definitely there will be some products that are much higher revenue in the market than other products. But it also is not completely predictable and it shifts with time. Composition shift with time.
Well, slightly move to the questions on culture at Zoho. There's a bunch of questions around, for example, you said that Zoho is driven by a holistic philosophy that puts contentment and humility as key virtues. And there is a certain set of values that Zoho stands for, etc. So there are questions around, how do you maintain this now that you're spread across so many locations? How do you make sure that all the work also gets done smoothly, as well as the culture and the values that the company is trying to maintain are also kind of maintained? How do you go about this?
Yeah, so it's actually it's one of the challenges we have to face right now, because it's only recently we have distributed ourselves so widely, right? Until then we had a Chennai and Tenkasi operation. That's about it. Now we have 10, 20 locations. So I posted as one of the challenges to our team today in this location. I said, long term, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, how do we remain a vibrant culture? And I said, that's a problem we have to set out to solve. Not a problem that is solved by anyone else. Not us, not by anybody else. Because the new experience, we are truly entering uncharted territory. So we are going to experiment with approaches. For example, one approach I proposed was every team should meet up about once a month or once every 2 months in one location for a couple of days. Not primarily just for work, but also sort of bonding with the team members, getting to know people, all that. So those kinds of things. So we'll have to see actually how it goes. And honestly, I don't have all the answers right now. That's what makes it exciting to run these experiments. That it's like the Forrest Gump quote, right? Life is a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to find. That very much applies to products. That very much applies to all of these.
Yeah. Sure, sir. There's a bunch of questions around innovation, sir. So I'll just probably give you a couple of questions that have come up. Mr. Chandas is asking, how do you hire innovation champions? I mean, you have been able to build out products in multiple categories. There are also questions around specific product categories. Like, for example, Excel or spreadsheets have been there for a long time, says Mr. Dwarak. Says not much changes have come up in spreadsheets, etc. Why is not much innovation happening there? And let's say, what's Zoho doing in that space? So there are a bunch of questions around innovation, how you're going about it, how you're hiring people who are very creative and innovative.
Yeah. The spreadsheet example, I'll give you a concrete innovation that we are doing, and actually we have something that's already up somewhat. We have a technology to convert a spreadsheet into a web app by itself. And we can reverse engineer a model, figure out the connections, build an app for it automatically. We are applying sophisticated intelligence to it. So these kinds of technologies will proliferate. So you build a spreadsheet, but you built an app. So those kinds of things are what innovation looks like.
And how do you go about hiring people and training them? I mean, do you do anything specific in terms of creating that building that mindset in people to be more creative, think out of the box, etc.? I mean, there are some questions around that as
well. Yeah. So our hiring strategy, as I mentioned, always is somewhat unorthodox. We don't go to the top. We don't go to IIT. We don't go to IIM, any of those. We have very few people from those institutions here. And we don't look for fancy credentials. We don't look for whether they have arrears, they finished their degree. But we don't ask for a degree certificate from anyone. Our HR is prohibited from asking degree certificates. If they don't have a degree, that's fine. So that is how we hire. And we look for certain attitudes to problem solving, some outlook on life that is adaptable, flexible. Take the bull by the horn approach. So that is how we hire.
There are a bunch of product owners here, sir. People who, small company owners, MSMEs, who run product companies. They're asking, as a measure to contribute to growing product culture in India, will Zoho University be open to share curriculum or course structure on how to build product mindset to fledgling product companies? Basically, they say they want to learn from the wisdom of Zoho's winning ways.
Yeah, again, there is not any grand secrets here. I want to de-emphasize that thinking because it's not like there's some recipe here that we can give you in a cookbook form. In fact, that's like asking what is the recipe for a hit movie. There isn't any, turns out. There isn't any because even for us, the next new product is a struggle often in terms of finding its footing in the market. And there is no success can only be, I say success can only be deserved. It cannot be guaranteed. So that's why it's not, it's not like you can just turn on a switch and some kind of formula will work. By the way, how much time do we have left? Actually, I wanted to plan on the time. I think you're muted.
Sorry. Yeah. We typically go up to 6:30, sir, but okay. It's up to you, sir. Depending on
I'll go until then because I have actually
request some of the participants to ask some questions also directly.
Yeah, sure, sir. So there is one question from Naren. He's been asking for some time. What's your lifetime goal?
The lifetime goal is to live an interesting life. So just to be relevant, stay interesting, and try to do some good work, enjoy it every day. I mean, you see one side of me, the other side I actually get to have some fun. I go for a long swim in the village. I go for long walks in the woods. So, I mean, I don't actually take myself too seriously that way. And I want to have, some, and that's one of the reasons why life is easier for employees, because if I'm too serious, then they have to get too serious too. We have a certain playfulness about the company. That's important. Being playful is very vital. So that's why I discourage questions like what some grand goal of life, because the grand goal of life is to be, to enjoy life
Yeah.
and be useful to somebody.
Sure. I think like Mr. Raj said, inviting people to unmute and ask questions. There's a question from Ambika. By the time others ask questions, she's wanting to hear your opinion on how your own life and education helped you embrace uncertainty, values of humility, etc.
No, I don't know that education in the formal sense prepared for this. It's more experiences of life. As I say, the school of hard knocks. The best school is the school of hard knocks. You are in it. Well, humility, every new product is a humbling experience, okay? We don't get to be, actually, as great actors or directors will tell you, I am only as good as my last movie. If your last movie flopped, the actor is a flop, right? So if they are only as good as their last movie. It's the same thing in true. I'm only as good as my last product. So we get to be humble because the universe will humble you again and again. And the embrace uncertainty came from repeated observation that we really cannot predict product success or product roadmap, all of that very easily because a lot of unknowns. There is a Rumsfeld phrase, the unknown unknowns. That's true about the product business, the unknown unknowns.
Yeah.
So you really take an approach where let's embrace those unknown unknowns. Let's not try to minimize all of them because we cannot actually.
Peter, can you share about your school experience in the village? You started a school, right?
Yeah. It's relatively new. It's about 80 kids now. We just built a school building actually all with mud bricks, mud wall, the traditional village style. We have built a school now. And the kids love it. Actually, I love it. It's super cool building in the sense it's actually cool inside. Even if it's hot outside, it's cool inside. So it's actually a nice thing. And we are actually now figuring out we have declared a few things, few cardinal principles. No exams, no grades. So the students have to learn what the material to demonstrate proficiency and not exams and grades. So these are the approaches we have taken and highly practically oriented education. So reading, for example, you won't study history. You might write an essay about the Emperor Ashoka. That emphasizes your writing skills and that maybe you have to research about Emperor Ashoka to write it. That's all the history. There is no history exams, nothing. So that is an example of how we are taking the approach.
Wonderful. I think you'll be able to get 800 people from there.
It's only 4 months. Huh?
Correct. In 10 years from now, you may get 800 people directly from your school.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
So,
Mr.
Ram,
Chandas has a question. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Chandas.
let me ask it.
Yeah.
Sridhar, fantastic, inspiring discussion. So I just wanted to get your view. Are you thinking of going IPO sometime in the future to create wealth, not just for yourself, but for your entire bunch of employees?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't intend to go IPO at all because, well, I would have to resign from the company because I don't like to run a public company. I'm unsuited for it because I actually don't enjoy reporting to public shareholders, public markets, all that. So I don't think, at least in my lifetime on my watch, this company won't go public. As for wealth, we make profit, we share it with the employees. That's an easy, direct transfer. Why complicate it through the stock market? That's my attitude. Not that I'm opposed to all those things, but it doesn't suit me personally. That's all. And we have to do what we like. I mean, why do we start business? To do what we like, not what the stock market likes, right? So.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Sridhar, I have a question. My name is Vaidyanath. So, this has been a very, very fascinating presentation from you. Absolutely.
Thank you.
And see, one thing that comes out very clearly is that in Zoho, culture is a very, very integral element in competitive strategy.
Exactly.
And it's a very, very difficult thing to do. So going forward, what are the challenges you see in sustaining this, culture being an element of strategy, whether it's talking about mindset, contentment, the overall philosophy of what the business should be doing, the decentralization into rural areas, the whole thing, if you look at the whole thing as a cultural element, and that's contributing to your success immensely, and it's all driven by you. So going forward, how do you think you can sustain it?
Yeah, that's a difficult, actually, honestly, would we be the same culture at 50,000 people, for example? It's impossible to answer it because we are only at 9,000 people. We have not actually done it. But I'm hopeful because, there is certain elements are there in the company, the way we are hiring, all of that, that is sort of culture preserving. I call it rooted. For example, today I gave this exact speech to our employees. I said, being in your hometowns allows you to be rooted to your culture, your family, all of that. And a rooted employee is also more long-term, more valuable to us because the problem of modernity is rootlessness, people floating around. And that actually creates sort of this whole alienation, and even eventually leads to things like depression. So it's important to be rooted, stay rooted. And that is essential part of our culture, and people are rooted. Zoho is home for them. And I want them to be also at their hometowns, homes, and to be able to work in Zoho. That is the goal. And those things, I think, will allow us to maintain a culture long term, but we have to actually prove it by doing it. And as far as what the long term, 20 years later, the industry is changing, technologies are changing, the landscape is changing. I often joke that maybe in 10, 20 years, there may not be a software industry per se. Software gets into everything. Therefore, everything eats software. Software eats everything. Therefore, everything has eaten software. Mm-hmm. So we have to be, that's a possibility, right? Software is like air. It will be everywhere, but therefore nobody pays for it, like air. And that is possible, right? That is possible. So I joke to people, we have to be prepared for that world too. So that's all I say.
Great, thanks.
I have a question. Your organization is full of young people. What is the shift in aspiration you've seen over the last 5 years of the people?
So clearly the demographics keep shifting, right? I mean, the aspirations of a person 20 years ago is not the same the aspirations of a person who joined 5 years ago. There are critical differences. But there's also common elements. I mean, always people, for thousands of years human history, human beings have had essentially the same mental map or landscape. There is something that is
I think we lost him. Maybe you can put the video off.
Yeah, maybe.
I cannot hear you.
I think it'll be bad. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you now. Yeah.
So definitely there is change in terms of employee outlook, but there is also constancy in terms of basic human values remain the same across time. Unfortunately, lost power here, but I'm still connected to Wi-Fi, I hope. So this room, there's a power cut here.
Yeah, we can hear you.
So I'll speak through. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes,
okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
I'll continue. Yeah, came back. So that is the newer generation clearly are much more exposure, much more global exposure. Okay, and you are on Facebook, you are on WhatsApp, you are on Instagram, all of that all the time. So there's a lot more global exposure. That brings with its own both strengths and weaknesses. Strengths are that, of course, people are well connected to the world. We can build products that are suitable. The weakness is people become unrooted, untethered. So then we have to connect them back to roots. So those are the challenges we face. So,
thank you. Yeah.
Ashutosh has a question. Ashutosh, do you want to ask it yourself? Good. Unmute yourself.
Yeah, sir. So, first of all, thank you so much for giving us all this valuable knowledge and everything. It's actually a lot useful. So I just wanted to ask, like I'm myself an founder of a small agency, and I'm from Thoothukudi. So I just wanted to ask one question, like managing all the work, you learn lots of new things, you need time for yourself and family, and even how to make sure the company moves forward. How do you manage all this time and plan out things so that, in 24 hours, you can bring the most productivity out of the day?
Yeah, this is actually, you'd be surprised at my answer because I don't really try to manage it too carefully. In fact, a lot of my management, I don't know, I can call it management because a lot of it is find the right people and say, take care of this problem well, and just own this problem, right? And so I don't actually manage it day to day that deeply everything because I have my own team, my own work. Often I'm immersed in some technology. So the company actually runs essentially by itself in many ways. That's the real truth. But then what do they look for from me? Certain philosophical, cultural outlook is what I supply, not day-to-day management of every little initiative, because I can't. There are hundreds of initiatives going on. There's no way for me to know everything. So that is the difference.
This was really an unexpected answer.
Yeah.
Thank you
That's
so much.
the truthful answer. That is the truthful answer.
Sure. Hiren has a question. Hiren, do you want to ask? Okay, I'll just ask the question. How do you make sure that the growth doesn't get into the heads of everyone in the company, into the heads, and their approach towards customers, partners, vendors, etc., remains the same as you were when you started and you were connected to a purpose? How do you make sure you're still connected to the purpose and the growth doesn't get in the heads of people?
Actually, in a way, this has gone. In the early days, I don't know that there was any big connected to a purpose because we're just struggling to make ends meet and you're there to survive first, right? So things like purpose only arise over time. So now we have actually a very passionate, even partner network, for example, that is totally believes in the company. I don't know that 10, 15 years ago, they necessarily believed as much as maybe this will make me some money or maybe this company is interesting. But today they are true believers. So these things emerge over time, I would say. I don't know, you can start with this is my big grand purpose of the universe because often the universe doesn't give us the room for such grand pronouncements. So I am a kind of person who says, find the purpose through work over time, slowly. It's like, slow cooking, slow building. So that is how I would do it. So.
Sure. Okay. Any other questions people can just unmute and ask? I mean, there are some questions on chat, but I'm just...
I want to ask Sridhar, first of all, great session, a lot of learning, a lot of insights, and you're so down to earth. I mean, it's kind of unbelievable, you gave so many times, you kept referring to movies and films and gave examples from there to make your point. Which is your all-time favorite movie?
Oh, no, now you're putting me on a spot. Actually, my all-time favorite movie was Schindler's List.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It's actually captured, I'll tell you why I like that movie, right? Here is a businessman. Someone exactly like many of us in this audience, right? And he's facing some, massive, something that hopefully none of us will ever face that, right? And how he rose to that particular occasion. And he was otherwise sort of maybe a mediocre businessman. He wasn't a very successful businessman. He wasn't particularly exemplary in his life, but somehow he became a hero in that process, right? In that whole Nazi era. So that is why it appealed to me. And so, in other words, he found a purpose through something that hopefully not happened to us, but something that was going on in the backdrop of that time. And that is actually often true. In business, there is a Tamil thing, right? Pilayar pidika, kurangai piditha kadai. That's often very true, okay? That that's often true, where you start with something, but you end up with something else. but you have to enjoy that process still. Don't try to predict the outcome, but enjoy the process. That's what I'll say.
Great.
Thank you.
Ram, any questions?
Yeah, there are questions in chat. I'm just, there are some people who unmuted themselves. So I just want to check if people want to ask questions.
Sir,
Yeah,
sir, I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
Can I ask?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Sir, it was
Please.
very inspiring listening to you, sir. We
Thank you.
enjoyed absolutely the session.
Thank you. Thank you.
I just want to ask you one question.
Yeah.
If you were to start your life once again, reboot, what do you think you'll do differently?
Well, I'd probably get started at 16. I wouldn't wait, and I probably wouldn't finish school, finish college, finish PhD, none of that. That's what I would do differently. So hopefully your kids are not around hearing this, because some of them might be tempted to try that.
Thank you so much. It was very inspiring listening to you.
Yeah.
Can I ask one question?
Sure, Mr. Go ahead.
Yeah. So you are in IT space, like a lot of these youngsters, especially IT young guys, when they come itself, they look for very flashy office. They first question they ask is, are you having only 5-day work, Saturday they can't work? So their aspirations are different. And so how do you manage all that and still, because you have been patient for 25 years and made it big, and you are a very simple, humble guy. So how did you manage that? And how you still inspire them?
Yeah. In fact, your question answers itself. When you're hiring, you can kind of look for what people are looking for, right? Look out for what are they looking for in this company. And we actually write a letter which goes out to every recruit, every candidate, which says, what are the reasons not to apply for Zoho? We write that letter. And in fact, that's an excellent tool. We use it. Actually, I wrote that letter. What are the reasons not to apply for Zoho? And we give that first, and then let people decide whether they still want to proceed, right? So that is actually some approach you might want to try.
That's up to you, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Apurva has a question. Apurva, do you want to ask?
Good evening, sir. So it is me, Apurva, and it is very much a pleasure to read someone over the net and meeting face to face, not meeting, even listening you. So I have one question. There are a few young entrepreneurs out there, and they are trying to get up and going to start a new startup, a new product base. So my question is, seeing the market or seeing the industry revolution, how we can predict the disruptive technologies after 5 years, first point. And second point is, what kind of business model you will suggest for the startup, especially for the product-based company, so that we can survive after 5 years, or we can start evolving on that part.
Yeah. So this question of how do you predict what will be the technology trend after 5 years is one of the hardest one. You've asked the hardest one, because it's not given to any of us to know. I mean, even companies as big as Intel and Microsoft have struggled with it. So, a lot of companies struggle with these problems because things happen that take you by surprise, always, in this industry particularly. And so that's why even Facebook, for example, was surprised by the emergence of WhatsApp. So they had to scramble to acquire, and they paid a huge price for WhatsApp. And Facebook already had all the resources to compete. They still had to pay up. And Google had to acquire YouTube. Even though they had Google Video platform, YouTube took off, Google Video did not take off. So they acquired YouTube. So this question is very hard one for anybody. Even the most technologically sophisticated companies struggle with this problem. Instead, I'll take an approach where I can't predict it, but I can quickly try to adapt to whatever happens. If you have that mindset, maybe even if you don't predict it, for example, we didn't predict that this kind of Zoom kind of software will take off. Because if we had known this 3 years ago, we would have worked on it sooner, right? So then the pandemic strikes, and we are scrambling for a video platform, and clearly Zoom was in the right time at the right place. And not even Google, Microsoft were there at the same time, right? So Zoom took off. That's an example where you could not have predicted this, right? But a good organization can quickly respond. We are responding. We have built a very powerful video platform within a 6 months or 7 months of the pandemic. So that you can hope to do. So that's what I would recommend.
Great.
So probably one last question, sir, because we're nearing 6:30. Jennifer has her hand up. So Jennifer, do you want to ask your question?
Sure. Thank you, sir, for whatever you've spoken so far. It's been very inspirational. My question is, I come from the finance industry, and I was wondering, when you look at the finance industry or the companies from there, what do you think they're lacking in terms of technology or innovation?
Yeah, I don't know which segment of finance you are in, banking or insurance or consumer loans or whatever. So it's a highly regulated industry, first of all. So whenever industry is highly regulated, and finance has to be regulated, because that, it has the potential to lose a lot of people money, right? To lose a lot of money for people. So it has to be regulated if it's not done right. And that creates a unique set of challenges in technology adoption, because you cannot be too risk-taking with technology. But having said that, finance companies internally can have some prototype developments going on. And what is important now is every business is becoming a software business, whether you like it or not. The construction business is software. The textile business is software, because you need to know software in order to automate your workflows, your processes better. You cannot simply outsource the job. You have to have in-house expertise. So finance definitely is in that category. So future will look like software companies in the finance business than finance companies doing software as an afterthought. That is how I'll think about the problem.
Got it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any more questions? We can maybe one.
Actually, lots more on chat, but I think right on 6:30, I think people will not leave you, Mr.
And I also might get kicked out of this factory, because I'm in the factory floor right now, and they will probably close shop soon.
Sure, sir.
Thank you so much. I think you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, my friends, for actively participating. We look forward to you being with us again very soon.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sridhar. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.